And now, it's news for the fourth listener with John Karpf.
This is News for the Fourth Listener, brought to you by Secular News Network and sponsored by Camp Quest, providing 18 weeks of fun, friends, and free thought to kids across the U.S. You can find a Camp Quest near you and help a child get to camp this summer or donate to help at campquest.org. Today, how 3 right-wing Christian leaders believe we should, or even if we can, deal with ISIS. We're going to start with Pat Robertson, who is certain that we can't deal with ISIS because the country has given up the founding principle of America, which, of course, is Christianity. He says we're helpless. Listen to this.
We've got over 300 million people in America. We have the most powerful armed forces in the world. There's nothing that could even come close to our strength. And why should we be afraid of a few dozen nutty radicals wandering around in pickup trucks? But we are, because somehow or another we've lost the ethic, the elan, if you will, which has drawn us together as a nation. We give up the founding principle of America, which is Christianity, a belief in the Bible, belief in God Almighty. When we've given that up, we're helpless. And so it's reflected in the fact that these crazy fanatics can come loose in small segments of the population and do terrible. What can they do? Well, they can put a bomb in. They can go for a radiological bomb. They can go for a dirty bomb. And one day they may even be able to import a real nuke, which could do terrible damage. Now, here's the deal. We got a president who refuses to acknowledge that ISIS is a problem, refuses to acknowledge that Islam is not peaceful. Islam means submission. It doesn't mean peace, it means submission. Submission to the Quran, submission to what they want to believe. Now, as long as we're strong, that's not a problem.
The elan. Do you believe that he said elan? Apparently, God is the elan, and Jesus is the panache of our nation that immunizes us from some guys in a pickup truck. And as much as I hate to say it, he kind of has a point about the fractured nature of our current society. We have become more fractured as a nation because we don't all watch the same 3 TV channels or listen to the same music. We have become a fractured society because of the internet, but so has the entire world. That is what the Arab Spring was all about. However, we are afraid of some guys in a pickup truck for the same reason we don't want to fly after a plane crashes. We have monkey brains, and when someone screams, there must be a leopard in the tree, and we all have to run. Watching ISIS on TV and on the net gives a few guys in a pickup truck all the immediacy of a huge army because it is right in front of us and it's personal. Change happens quickly now. The Occupy movement sprang up quickly, but it went away fairly quickly because there weren't months and years of shared experience in the trenches, as was experienced by civil rights activists in the 50s and 60s or AIDS activists in the 80s that gave them resilience. You can call it elan, but it's a sociological issue, not a religious one. Continuing, Erick Stakelbak is the Christian author of the book ISIS Exposed, and he lays out the ISIS blueprint for world domination that has a chance in America now because of atheists and secularism and popular culture. Good is bad and bad is good, yada yada. Listen to him talk on the Dove TV network to Perry Atkinson.
Erick Stakelbak's with us today. His latest book, which I have in front of me right now, ISIS Exposed. And Erick, where do we go with this? How big of a threat is this thing?
A lot of times Americans say, hey, what's happening in the Middle East doesn't affect us here. Why should I care about ISIS? Just last month, the FBI director, James Comey, made a very stunning statement. He said that right now, in all 50 U.S. states, there are ongoing investigations into ISIS-related activity. So the barbarians are not just at the gates, they're inside the gates.
Why is ISIS seemingly attracting young people where Osama bin Laden couldn't do that?
Well, Perry, in my book, I call it jihadi cool. What ISIS does is they use social media. Their social media operations are controlled by Westerners who were raised here in America, who know how to speak directly to an English-speaking audience. They know how to appeal to Westerners. And I think in our culture, unfortunately, Perry, over the last few decades, we've had our millennial generation weaned on violent video games where they're chopping heads, on these gory horror movies with realistic torture scenes. I think almost desensitized in many ways to the violence they're seeing, and in some cases actually attracted to it.
Because that was my next question. What attracts them to killing and beheading? And I don't know, are we creating an immunity to this?
7th century medieval barbaric Arabian desert ideology and tactics wedded with 21st century technology. I describe how ISIS on Twitter is talking about hip-hop music. They're talking about Hollywood movies. They're saying, hey, come to the caliphate. And we have Pringles, we have Snickers bars. These are actual conversations.
You said earlier Bakker, they're in every state. So that suggests not only is recruiting going on, but there's got to be an underlying agenda for ISIS in America.
Here's the agenda, Perry. We've had 180 U.S. citizens leave their comfortable homes here in America, travel to the caliphate to join ISIS. Now, these are U.S. citizens, U.S. passport holders. If they don't get killed waging jihad in the Middle East, one day they will return home. And when you come home fresh off slicing heads in Syria, you're probably not going to transition peacefully back into civilian life.
These guys are driving around in worn-out Toyota pickups. I mean, come on. Why are we bowing down to this?
This is not an 800-pound gorilla. Yes, they're dangerous because they're a global phenomenon. They have fighters from 90 different countries who have flocked there. But look, this is not an 800-pound gorilla. We can crush ISIS.
All right, the one I want to deal with now is the subject of evil. This is evil on steroids.
Yeah.
Every night we're seeing it on television, and we're not dealing it with it. I mean, this is worse than World War II and the Nazi thing.
First, how can you compete with Pringles and Snickers bars? And second, why do they always go to the Nazi stuff? 60 million people were killed during World War II. That was 3% of the total human population at the time. In order to match those numbers today, there would have to be 200 million human deaths. That would be more than every man, woman, and child in the 26 states and Washington, D.C., east of the Mississippi River in the United States. As of right now, even the Pentagon doesn't know how many people have been killed in the war with ISIS, but the best estimates are less than 20,000 in total. AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, seats 85,000 people. Less than 1/4 of the seating capacity of that stadium has been killed in the ISIS war, yet somehow it's worse than killing every man, woman, and child east of the Mississippi River. Why doesn't hyperbole like that make every man, woman, and child east of the Mississippi cringe when they hear it? Finally, last month, televangelist Jim Bakker broadcasted his show live from a prepper expo he was hosting at his megachurch in Missouri, where he offered viewers several reasons why they should fear imminent chaos and unrest in America, ISIS, urban violence, and anti-Christian persecution at the hands of the Obama administration and the gay community, of course. He says that ISIS is coming and just waiting for the final word, so that you should order his special freeze-dried meat and potatoes while you have the chance.
So many in the inner city, for some reason, hate the police. If the police are gone for one day, they're gone. It's just suddenly gone. We are going to have anarchy. We are going to have the greatest hell on earth because the gangs will take over. And it's time to be ready. It's time to be prepared. It's time to be informed. Because the Bible talks about events where 1/4 of the world will die in some major event, where great wars, great armies as big as 200 million people. Our enemy has gone from country to country and city to city. And now, from the information I'm getting, the group called ISIS and others are already established themselves in the United States of America. And they're waiting for the final signals. And you saw it taking place. And you basically call it, again, the hordes of hell. But the bartering, like the food that we send out, those packets of food are going to be more valuable than gold. I mean, there's certain things. I don't want to be crude, but I'm going to be anyway. I mean, toilet paper is going to be worth a lot of money. Anything you use up is going to be used. It's going to be worth money. But bartering, you told us back then, find something that people are going to need and just put some of it away.
Isn't it great where he goes straight from the hordes of hell to scare you and then jumps right into bartering the mac and cheese and ice cream sandwiches that he sells that will last for years on your shelf, will be worth more than gold, apparently, and will protect you from the inner city people who hate the police. So, this week, Pat Robertson says we just don't have the savoir-faire to resist ISIS. Erick Stakelbak says ISIS spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to recruit 180 Americans, but that's worse than World War II. And Jim Bakker wants to save you from the inner city gangs with freeze-dried veggie burgers before they get the final signal. You may facepalm now. This has been News for the Fourth Listener, brought to you by Secular News Network and sponsored by Camp Quest, providing 18 weeks of fun, friends, and free thought to kids across the U.S. You can find a Camp Quest near you and help a child get to camp this summer or donate to help at campquest.org. For Secular News Network, I'm John Karpf.